Joining me right now, Democratic presidential candidate John Delaney. He is the former congressman for Maryland. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
So, in step with what Amash is saying, just last month, you called the president lawless. You say he has committed impeachable offenses, but you stop short of calling for impeachment and say this should be solved at the ballot box. Is that still your point of view?
Yes, I think we should be focusing on 2020 and beating the president at the ballot box. I think Speaker Pelosi has struck the right chord on this issue, and I basically agree with what she's saying.
So if you and others say there are, impeachable offenses that the president appears to have committed, then what does that say that you wouldn't go further and say impeachment proceedings need to get underway? And what does that mean for members of Congress who say they think there are impeachable offenses, but then they won't take it a step further?
Well, first of all, what Speaker Pelosi has said, which I agree with, is there's a lot of investigation to do. And she's going to do that. The House is going to do that. And they're going to make sure they pursue their oversight responsibilities. But people like myself who are running for president, what I'm focused on is talking about what I want to do for the American people, how I want to take this terribly divided nation and bring it back together. I have new ideas that can solve some of the big issues that we're facing right now and lay out a positive vision for the future. So I think the House is going to do its job in terms of its oversight responsibility. Wherever that takes it, it takes it. I trust Speaker Pelosi completely on this issue. And I'm really focused on going out to the American people and telling them what I want to do for them as president and kind of stopping some of this noise and actually focusing on some of the common sense solutions that we all know exist for some of the big important issues we face as a country.
And what are, say, two of the things that you really want to do that you think helps bring a divided nation together?
Well, I want to call for national service, for example, not mandatory, but create a really exciting program where every high school graduate would have an opportunity to serve our country, either in the military or by doing community service or by becoming part of something I'm calling the Climate Corps, which would be young people to go around the country and help communities build sustainable infrastructure, or just a general kind of infrastructure program. I think that would be transformative for this nation because it would really help that young generation of Americans. They would be much more unified. They'd have a commitment of service instilled in them, which is really important. But I think every American would benefit from it. So that's one of the things, for example, that I want to do as president that I think can be incredibly unifying. The other thing I want to do in my first 100 days is I'm calling for my administration to focus on 5 or 6 big things in climate, in infrastructure, in criminal justice reform, in privacy, but have them all based on existing bipartisan bills in the Congress. Wouldn't it be amazing if a president stepped forward and said, these are things we agree with each other on? And as a responsible leader who cares about this notion of common purpose, I want to lead us towards getting these things done because Democrats and Republicans have found common ground on these things. So those are some of the things I'm talking about that I think could be transformative and totally change the tone at the top from the president, particularly compared to what we have now, which is someone who basically wakes up and tries to divide us every day.
And right now, you're one of 23 amongst the field of Democratic contenders. And, one of the latest polls, Fox polls, shows that former Vice President Joe Biden is far in the lead, followed by Bernie Sanders. And then everyone else is either in single digits, but far away from the double digits. So, are you concerned? I mean,
No.
You're one of the first to have come out, about 2 years ago. You're now at 1%. How do you gain traction?
Well, I think the debates are key. We're in the debates, which is important. And I think that's really going to be an opportunity for all of us to introduce ourselves to the American people. And I think Vice President Biden's in a good position. Everyone knows who he is. So that obviously helps in this early polling. But you have to remember the first vote's not going to be cast for about 10 months. I think it's pretty clear the Democratic Party needs to put up more of a moderate centrist candidate to win in 2020. I think that's pretty obvious. But I also think the Democratic Party is looking for some new people with new ideas. People who haven't been in politics their whole career, people like myself who have been a successful entrepreneur, starting 2 businesses, creating thousands of jobs before I served in the Congress. So I think after the debates and the American people get an opportunity to see us all up on the stage, I think my vision for the country and importantly how I plan on making it happen is really what's going to set me apart from the rest of the field, which in many cases are putting forth impossible promises. things that actually don't make sense and can never happen. And I think the American people are tired of that. They're looking for solutions. They're looking for someone who can actually get things done.
So what's your strategy on convincing the American people that, you don't have impossible ideas, but achievable ideas, particularly when we're talking about one of the most diverse Democratic fields, in political history?
Well, again, I think there's a lot of issues that matter, whether it be climate or what's happening with workers' pay. And I think the voters should say, okay, what are you going to do about it? So like for climate, for example, I have by far the best climate plan, in part because I can actually make it happen. The stuff I'm working on, I introduced as bipartisan legislation in the Congress. So I can show the voters how the things I'm proposing actually can really happen and make a difference in their lives. Again, a lot of these people are putting forth things that are impossible in many ways and don't make a lot of sense from a policy perspective. They may sound good, but I think the American people in the Democratic Party know that to beat Trump, which is the most important thing, and actually to govern, we have to put forth responsible solutions to the issues that we face. And I think the American people are at a point now where they're just tired of all the fighting, tired of all the noise. They want us to come back together and actually start getting things done. So topping the list among those concerns that American voters have, health care. Yes. And you have said that, Medicare for all is really not the answer. And I'm quoting you now saying politicians supporting Medicare for all are not being honest with you. As Democrats, we need to be fact-based in our thinking. But right now, one of the top candidates is pushing this idea, of Medicare for all, Bernie Sanders. Yes. And he is second in the polls. So is he speaking the language that the American voters on health care want to hear? I don't think so, because, again, we're going to have a real debate on health care. And I think what the single-payer system that Senator Sanders is putting forth is just bad policy. It'll make health care worse in this country. And I think if we actually run on that, we're going to lose. Because if you go to the American people, many of which like their private insurance, and say that we're going to take it away from you and give you a government plan, we're not going to win a lot of elections. And I also think the American people understand that we should have a form of a mixed model like I'm proposing, similar to what countries like Germany have, where we have a government plan that everyone gets as a right. I'm fully for universal health care, but also allow private insurance options. That's the common sense, obvious way to move forward to improve our health care system. And, things like a single-payer health care system will ultimately make health care more limited and lower quality in this country. And I don't think the American people really want to vote to give up their health care. Think about all the union workers out there. I mean, my dad was a union electrician. My parents didn't go to college. And I saw how my dad's union and all these unions around the country fight so hard to get really good health care for their workers. Do we really want to run as a party that wants to take that away from them and give them some government-only solution? I mean, that's a terrible idea. We should stand for universal health care. We should stand for everyone getting health care as a basic right, because I do think it's a human right, and I do think it's smart economic policy. But this notion that a government-only solution is the way to solve health care, I mean, if you go to any hospital in this country and you ask them how it would go for them if all of their bills were paid at Medicare reimbursement rates, every hospital in this country will tell you that they would close. Just an example of how misguided some of these policies are. Okay, John Delaney. So again, you threw your hat into the race 2 years ago. Was the impetus simply the election of Donald J. Trump? Yes. Yeah, the election of President Trump was a punctuation of terrible decades in our politics, right, where we've had irresponsible leaders who have basically been trying to divide the American people for their own self-interest. And the American people have lost so much faith in their government that they elected someone like him, who's basically a human wrecking ball. And he lies to the American people, and he's irresponsible with the way he's handling our country. And I just think the American people are looking for something so much better at this point. They want to turn the page. They want a unifier, not a divider. They want some new ideas, and they want someone who will actually get things done and focus on some of the things we agree with each other on. Okay. And I'm that candidate.